Yes, my friends, we are on another guitar building journey. I'm definitely excited about this one. You've heard me mention this guitar in past videos, but this is going to be kind of my take on it. There'll be a couple of elements that are different, but nonetheless, I'm excited. So let's get started. So here is my taped up neck. Headstock look familiar to all you guitar players out there? So this is going to be an upside down headstock guitar. I've never had one before. And basically what I've done is I've covered it in tape because we're going to paint the headstock. I've got a theme in mind for this guitar, and I think the colors I've chosen will look really cool, but we'll just have to see the final product when it's done. So the first thing I did was I cleaned the face of the headstock with this goof off. I used this to basically clean it and get any gunky stuff off the wood. So the first thing we got to do is we got to put some primer on the face of the headstock. All right, so let's get started. One thing I should mention, guys, is I'm also not an expert, so I might not do everything exactly right, so just keep that in mind. All right, so here's before laying down primer. Let's do this. Okay, I'd say we got some good coverage here. I'm gonna let that dry for a little while. And you'll see too that there's the channel for the truss rod. What I did was I also took some painter's tape and covered the truss rod hole so that way that didn't get filled with primer and paint. All right, so the primer is now dry. So before I start painting, there is one thing I did. I took a piece of sandpaper. This is just sandpaper for my sanding tool. This is probably a 220 grit, which you could probably go higher than that, but this was the highest I had laying around, and it's not too bad. But what I did was I lightly, very lightly, just went up and down the headstock to get a smooth surface. This is so that when I apply the paint should go on smoothly. Let's do this. All right, so I just got back from running some errands. I got some more sandpaper, and I had to make a 7 brew run. Cheers. Let's go see how the headstock looks. Okay, not bad at all. I like that. So I think we're going to apply one more coat. I was considering maybe sanding between coats, but to be honest with you, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm not gonna sand this coat. So the paint I'm using is this Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover Paint and Primer. This color is Aqua Satin. Let's do this. One thing I did know. All right, so it's currently Monday, March 17th. And since that video, I added about 2 more coats of that really light blue. And I decided to have some fun. So this is kind of the theme I'm going for. It's kind of the 90s theme. And some of my guitar playing friends might have seen this guitar made by Cower Guitars that has this kind of 90s paint splatter thing going. Me personally, I think it looks amazing. And I thought I would do somewhat my take on this, but again, I'm doing an artist guitar, basically my version, but I wanted to somehow incorporate this splatter effect. So here's what I came up with. So bear in mind, it's not clear coated or anything like that. The clear coat will really make this pop out. But basically what I did was I bought these cheap small paint brushes, and one by one, I would spray paint the brush with the color and do about 2 splatters for each color. And of course I used a different paintbrush for each color. I know there's some people that probably frown upon it and they're like, oh, that sucks. And, hey, it's my guitar, I can do what I want. But I think we're off to a pretty good start. So all of these colors are just spray can aerosol colors. One's hot pink, one's purple, one's like a Maui blue or a Bahama blue, and then the other is neon green. I'm not going to clear coat this yet because I'm waiting on something to come in the mail that's going to go on this headstock, and I got to get that on there before I can clear coat it. But anyways, y'all, I'm excited. I think this is going to be fun. Stay tuned. So we're going to go ahead and put at least 1 clear coat on the headstock. The decal I ordered came in, but was not what I expected. That being said, I'm going to do some research on a decal, but I'm going to go ahead and put at least 1 coat of clear coat on here because when I go to lay the decal down, I'm going to need a smooth surface. So let's get started. There's the clear coat we'll be using. I think I laid it on a little thick, but nothing a little sanding can't help. I'll let that dry for 24 hours, and then tomorrow I'll do some sanding. But with that being said, let's get started on something else. All right, so the body came in yesterday, and I'm not going to show the front of it because it would give too much away. But I did go ahead and plug all the holes and to ensure paint doesn't get in there, and same for the front. So we're going to go ahead and prime this thing. By the way, this body is made by Pearl Guitars, and I must say they did a really good job on this. I'm excited. All right, I think we got some good coverage here. So I did get a little bit of a run right there, but I can sand that. That's not a problem. Gonna let this dry, and it'll be time for paint. Till the next video. All right, so last night what I did after I primered this was I took some 1000 grit sandpaper and smoothed this out really good. And for any areas that had dripping and it dried, I took some 400 grit and sanded that out. So now what I'm doing is I'm prepping this for paint. And this one's gonna be a little tricky, and when you see the final product, you'll understand why. Let's get started. All right, so the prep work is done. It was very tedious. Took me about an hour and a half to complete, but hopefully it will be worth it when I'm done. Now let's paint. Time to paint. All right, guys, I don't know if you can tell, but the color I did was the same as the headstock, that kind of bright teal color. Like I said, I'm not going to show you the front yet because that's going to give away everything, but so far looking good. I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and then I got a show to do, so I'll see y'all later. All right, so most of the paint is done on the body, and I also got the decal on the headstock and put some more clear coat on it. And my goal right now is to finish the painting on the body. There might be some touch-ups afterwards, but those shouldn't be a big deal. Let's get started. Okay, so this is just an older picture of previous work, but with that being said, for the most part, the painting's done. I've just got to get another pink. The pink that I was trying to use didn't work out. I don't know if it was because it was maybe a water-based paint or something, I'm not sure. But I'm mainly dealing with either solvent or oil-based paints. But no big deal. I'm going to stop by Home Depot and just get a pink enamel paint, and that should solve the issue. So the logo that's on there, my wife made on her Cricut machine. I ordered some Ibanez logos from Etsy, but they weren't the size I wanted. So my wife, being the creative person she is, was like, I bet I can make that on my Cricut machine. And she did. I know it's hard to tell in this picture, but the logo is basically a silver chrome color, and it reflects, so it's really cool. Not to be biased or anything, but I'd say my wife did an amazing job on the logo. I know I married her for a reason. I apologize for not showing the entire process of everything I'm doing on this build, but trying to paint this is very difficult, and I want to do the best I can, and trying to film and do this at the same time is a little challenging. Also, too, one thing I should note is yesterday morning we had someone that was snooping around our carport. I caught him on our ring cam, and I won't go into details, but I'll just say that I was able to deter him fast, and he jetted off. I reported him to the local police and showed them the ring camera footage. And apparently, someone else had reported a similar incident involving the same person. So maybe at some point he'll be caught. We shall see. But anyways, that's my progress for now, guys. It's bedtime. Adios. So the headstock is finished, and I'm very happy with it. After putting a couple of clear coats on it, I waited for about a day, and then did some wet sanding on it, and then I polished it with some carnauba wax. I also installed the Floyd Rose locking nut, which this is the R5 version, and I installed the Goto tuners. So basically what we've got is a maple neck with the offset dots, 24 frets, and I believe the frets are Jescar. Now, these are non-locking tuners. One thing that I've noticed lately is I sometimes see Floyd Rose equipped guitars with a locking nut that also have locking tuners. I've never understood why you would need locking tuners for a guitar that's equipped with a locking nut and Floyd Rose bridge. On a guitar with the Floyd Rose system and a locking nut, The only benefit I can see is maybe fast string changes, but that's about it. With all that being said, I'm still working on the body. I decided to start fresh. Some of the ideas that I had didn't work out, so I felt it best to start over and learn from my mistakes. And hopefully we'll have a great end product to show. Nonetheless, some progress was made. The headstock's finished, so I'm happy with that. But that body needs some serious work. And hopefully I can make it happen. We shall see. The colors I was going for was kind of a 90s theme. You can see this pattern right here. It kind of gives that idea. And another thing that kind of inspired the colors was this guitar made by Cower Guitars. This is their Banshee, and it's got this 90s paint splatter vibe, which I think is awesome. Now, of course, I'm not going to do that entirely on mine. Maybe some parts of it. All right, so a lot of guitar nerds are going to immediately recognize the design on the front of this body. But for those who don't know, the body is an Ibanez RG style body, and the graphic that I'm guessing is laser etched into it is the same graphic that's pictured here on John Petrucci's signature guitar, the JPM 100 by Ibanez, when he was endorsing them years ago. However, I didn't want to go with those colors, and I basically wanted to do kind of a flip version of it, if you will. So, for example, instead of black hardware, chrome hardware, upside down headstock with a silver Ibanez logo instead of a gold one like on his. Now for the big reveal. What colors did I go with on this guitar? Well, most of them are on this headstock, but there you go. These are the colors I went with. So we've got, for the lighter blue, it's an aqua satin. For the darker blue is an oasis blue. For the purple, I think it's grape. The pink is berry pink. And the green is key lime. All of these colors you can get at Home Depot. Rust-Oleum enamel paints. And I'm very happy with it. I need to do some sanding on certain parts of it to get rid of some paint and to smooth it out. And then one of the plans I have is just on the back and the sides of the guitar, I'm going to do that jawbreaker effect that I did on the headstock. But I'm not going to do it on the front, because I think the front looks just too cool. But hopefully this captured the 90s vibe I was going for. I think it did, personally. And I can't wait to see the final result. I think this is going to be an awesome guitar. With that being said, though, this is definitely one of the most tedious paint jobs I've ever done. I guess I can understand why now Music Man doesn't want to do the Picasso design, because for an amateur like me, this was very difficult and time-consuming. Y'all have seen the colors and everything, but one thing I did, and this was actually something my wife helped me with, was you'll notice there's some black lines that are on the outside of the designs. That is actually not paint, that is pinstripe tape. And the reason we went with pinstripe tape is because trying to paint these crevices with either a marker or a paintbrush posed too much risk of ruining the paint job. So we decided to go this route instead. But one thing that I might have just given away inadvertently, because you see it on the right inner side of the horn, is this splatter effect on the back, the sides, and everything. Like I said, I was going for kind of a 90s color theme. So the colors are basically the same as what I used on the front. They're just splattered all over the guitar. Same as the headstock, basically. So now what my goal is I'm going to do a little wet sanding, because I just want to kind of smooth things out. And also I'm going to do some touch-up work on certain spots here. And like you can see right there, I need to touch that up. Just to kind of give you an idea of how I did this wet sanding is I mostly used this 2000 grit sandpaper, because I didn't want to get to the wood or to the primer. And I had a cup here that I put pieces of this 2000 grit sandpaper in, and I just very lightly went over most of the guitar. Basically the goal was I just wanted to smooth out the paint, was all I wanted to do. Alright, so I've got it wet sanded. So basically for the edges right here, not this one, but this one, all around the guitar, is I'm going to take a piece of black pinstripe tape and I'm going to go around. I think that's going to give it kind of hopefully a 3D effect, if you will. So, certainly not seeking perfection on this, but Like I said, for an amateur, I guess I did all right. But I'd be lying to you if I told you this was easy. This was extremely difficult. All right, so I've got the touch-ups that I did complete and stuff. This is about the best I can do with the limited skills that I have when it comes to painting. I'm sure there's guys that could do cartwheels around me when it comes to this sort of thing. But I think I did okay. I'm gonna let this sit for a few days before I clear coat it. I'll apply coat after coat after coat to ensure we get a nice finish on this. So I've taken some advice from some friends on here. One of them being Of the Dragon, who paints guitars for Joe Satriani. If anybody knows about painting guitars, he does. And so what he suggested, because I'm using this lining tape and this tape in the designs, is to do like 2 or 3 light coats of clear. And he said the reason for this is because if I was to do like really heavy wet coat for the first go round, that the tape would mess up big time and start lifting. And we don't want that. All right, I think enough time has passed for this third coat. Let's get this third light coat on there. So far it looks like the tape is holding up pretty good. I don't know if I'm gonna get to doing any real wet coating tonight. I mainly just wanted to get the light coats on today. I'm gonna probably wait a day or so to start doing the wet stuff. But at least I will have gotten the lighter coats out of the way. After this dries, I'm gonna do one final light coat, and then I'm gonna call it a night. You can already see it getting a little bit of a glare from the flashlight. That's cool. I thought I'd show you the string retainer that I put on the headstock. I installed that yesterday, so looking good there. And there's the heel of the neck right there. We'll have to drill holes for that. So I'm really happy with how the headstock turned out. I think that looks amazing. Look at that shine from the logo. All right, last light coat. Let's go. I think the black stripe around the front gives a good contrast between the front and the back. This concludes part 8 of the RG/John Petrucci inspired guitar build. So I've been letting the clear coat cure for the past couple days, so we'll be leaving the body alone for now. But with that being said, I've got a goal set in mind, and that is to replace these black plastic parts with translucent parts. I was going to try and have some made by the company that sold me the body, which is Pro Guitars. And he does great work, but the only thing I will say is he's not very fast at responding to messages. It had been about 2 or 3 days since I got a reply asking if he would be willing to send me clear or translucent parts. And by that point, I was just like, you know what, maybe I'll just try and make them myself. So if this fails, I'll just have him make me some. But my hopes are is that I'll be able to just make the parts on my own. So the goal I have in mind is or at least what I hope I'm going to be able to do is I'm hoping I'll be able to just trace these parts on this plastic. And I bought a knife that I can use to basically cut this acrylic. That's what this material is. And I've got a drill. I can drill the screw holes also. So let's hope I can make this happen. I made myself a trim cavity cover. Look at that. I made sure to drill the holes slowly. Trim cavity cover, done. I'll have to continue the others tomorrow because I've got a gig tonight. Fast forward to tomorrow, Saturday. So after I got home from my gig last night, I ended up cutting the other pieces. Now I just got to shape them. I made an interesting discovery that's actually pretty cool. You remember how I said these pieces were translucent? Well, they're not. They're actually clear. How cool is that? What I've been doing is been tracing the shapes of the plastic parts into the acrylic. I have two tools, this thing and this thing, which looks like a pin. I've been using this more often. This seems to get the job done for what I need to do. That's basically what I did with this. So the next thing I gotta do is I gotta shape these two pieces. This smaller one covers the cavity that has the 1/4-inch jack. Then this longer piece covers the cavity that has the pickup selector and the volume and tone controls. Alright y'all, after some sanding on my orbital sander, we have the control plate. One thing too is when I sand these is I want to make sure that the parts don't stick on the sides because they're going to be screwed down with screws anyway, so you want them to come out easily, and that's how I did this. Now for that area. Alright y'all, this piece is done. There you go. Time to drill some holes. Alright y'all. The plastics on the back are done. I am happy with those. And hey, when all else fails, if the company doesn't get back to you about doing clear plastic parts for your guitar, just do them yourself like I did. So as you can see, I've been a little busy tonight. Alright, so what I did was I did a final wet sand. I started with a 1000 grit sandpaper and then went all over the body with that. This time when I wet sanded, I took my good friend of the dragon's suggestion and put some soap in the water and wet sanded all over with the 1000 grit, and then did the same thing but with the 2000 grit. Some folks like to do like 1000, 1500, 2000, 2500, 3, whatever. I just did 1 to 2. And then with a combination of electric buffing and hind, I first buffed with this medium color tone polish and then this fine polish. These are made, you can get them from Stuart McDonald. And there's the back. Now it's kind of hard to tell. See if I can get in the light some more. So it's got a little bit of a shine. I wasn't going for like crazy gloss or anything like that. So, and then there of course is the front. Like I said, for an amateur, I think I did okay. It's my guitar, so I'm happy with it. And I think it's going to look awesome on stage. I'm sure I could get very nitpicky when it comes to the finish on this thing, but I'm happy with it. I'm going to keep it as is. I think once the electronics are in and once all the hardware and stuff is in, it's going to look really cool. But as far as painting and finishing, that part for me is done. So the next thing I'm waiting on is some electronic shielding paint, which should be here Thursday. I'm going to shield the pickup cavities as well as the control plate and the output jack cavities. And then hopefully soon we'll start putting this thing together and we'll have another guitar. Alright, so we got some things done. So I have put the bridge post on there. So this bridge is an Ibanez Low Pro Edge. Basically it's a locking tremolo. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of Floyd Rose's, but I've heard a lot of good things about the Ibanez Low Pro Edge. And I want to say Godo possibly made these for Ibanez, but I could be wrong. I've owned an Ibanez guitar before, but I've never had any experience with their Low Pro bridge. But like I said, I hear a lot of good things about it. As you can see also, I've got the pickups mounted. You'll notice that there is some copper shielding in the cavities. So both of these are DiMarzio pickups. The neck is an Air Norton, and the bridge is an Evolution. I know a lot of Petrucci fans are like, well, he used the Steve Special in the bridge. I've heard some mixed feelings on the Steve Special. I've never played a Steve Special pickup before, but from what I understand, the mids are scooped on it quite a bit. But again, I've never played it before. That's just hearsay. And it's the signature pickup of Steve Morse, who is an amazing guitar player. But I went with the Evolution because I did have experience with it. I've played a gem, and the pickup just rocked, so that's what I went with. So I guess you could say it's kind of a combination of Petrucci / Steve Vai. I'm getting the neck pickup that Petrucci used in his model, but I'm getting the bridge pickup of Steve Vai's gem. Another thing I had to do was I had to order some new pots. the CTS putts I ordered, the volume and the tone, they didn't protrude enough out here for me to put the nut to screw on. So I went on Amazon today and ordered some long shaft pots that should solve that problem. Also, too, right here is where the three-way switch is going to go. I had to order this DiMarzio three-way switch that is called a 4-pole double throw switch, and that's going to allow me to do what I want to do. So the way John Petrucci wires his switch is on the first position of the three-way selector is the bridge pickup. The third selection is the neck. And in the center position, he uses these two inner coils in parallel. Now, while that does sound good, for me, the more useful sound is the outer coils in parallel. That'll give me that kind of stratty tone. Like I said, the inner coils sound good. For my style and for what I do, the outer coils in parallel is what works for me. But these are the neck furls. Again, they're hot pink. I got these from the same guy that built the body. And then I did some copper shielding, not only just on the neck cavities, but I did it on the control cavity, the output, and the trim cavity. I know not everything has to be shielded, but at the advice of my good friend who's a guitar nerd more so than I am, he suggested I should go ahead and copper shield the trim cavity. And plus, with these clear acrylic covers, it actually looks pretty cool. Whenever I see copper, besides penny, I also think of something like steampunk or whatever. But I think that looks cool. That's just my opinion. I will say this too, putting this low pro edge bridge on here and the pickups has made this guitar a little heavier. All right, so we got my good buddy Mark here I've known for several years, and he's helping me get this neck on there. And he's looking all sexy with that guitar body with the knobs and all that jive. Yeah, yeah, there you go. We have drilled the holes into the neck. We had to measure this very carefully. And one thing, too, we had to do is we had to use different screw sizes. So these are going to go on the bottom part of the neck, and the shorter ones are going to go on the top. And so what we've got going here is we've got a piece of window screen. This is going to kind of, how would you say, Mark, put some teeth into it.
Keeps the neck from shifting.
Keeps the neck from shifting. So we're going to do that. So we've got the neck on. Let's put some strings on and see how we're looking. All right, so here it is put together for the most part. It is missing the three-way selector that was supposed to come in yesterday. And a little update on that, I did get reimbursed for the shipping on that since it didn't arrive in the time it was supposed to. So thank you to Guitar Audio for doing that. I appreciate it. So a couple things. Basically, the Floyd Rose locking nut is sitting high on the neck. So basically what's going to end up having to happen is the shelving that the locking nut sits on is likely going to have to be routed a little lower so that the strings sit closer to the first fret. Because there's a little more involved with this build, we're dealing with a basically a Floyd Rose style tremolo, Floyd Rose locking nut. There's going to be a little more setup involved in this one than my Telly build that I did a few months back. So once that switch comes in, we'll get the electronics wired and get the pickups going. And I think for this build, I'm going to take this up to Rob Scobie at Martin Music to do a complete overhaul on it. Because at this point, we've just basically gotten the basics done. I currently have it strung with 10 to 46 gauge strings. I just threw a cheap set of Diodarios on there, and the neck can get used to the tension now. So we've come a long way, but the guitar is definitely not gig ready yet. It still needs a bit of work. So we have started wiring this thing, as you can see. You can see we've got a capacitor right there. So this is the wiring that we're doing for the JP inspired build. Only difference being is instead of the center position being these two in parallel, they're going to be these two in parallel. There's one thing that I did not know, and that is on these pots, the volume and the tone, you can actually use audio tapers for both. You don't have to necessarily have a linear taper for tone. Which I thought this whole time you had to have audio for volume and linear for tone. And actually, you could use audio tapers for both. I'm always learning new things too. All right, so my buddy Mark has got the guitar wired. For some reason, he ran into an issue with the volume pot, and basically what was happening was that it wasn't turning the volume all the way down. Luckily, he had a spare pot that he put in there, and it worked fine. There's the back of it, and there's the front. And while this guitar looks, in my opinion, awesome, it is far from finished. So I'll be out of town for about a week, and my buddy Mark is going to take this up to Rob Scobie at Martin Music to get this thing dialed in. All right, so the guitar is currently with Rob Scobie up at Martin Music, and I thought I would go over a text he sent me to kind of discuss certain aspects of what he'll be doing to it. And some things I did that may not have been necessary, but, you know, again, I'm not a guitar tech, so he's the expert in that. But here's the text. It says here, Josh, I took a look at the Ibanez, which, yeah, as we all know, it's not really an Ibanez. It's just my take on one. He said, y'all did a good job, referring to me and Mark, as far as throwing it together. But I think you and I need to sit down and go over some basics, which we discussed that in the vehicle. He called me, and since me and my wife were on vacation, we were able to talk while I was driving. Hands-free, of course. So the first thing he said is all of the shielding you did is not really necessary, mainly because, I guess, humbuckers, and usually it's done with single coils. And he says that the shielding doesn't work as configured because it needs to be grounded. Like I said, this is where I pay people like him to take over for my lack of knowledge in that field. And in part 3, he says the Ibanez nut fits the string spacing better. So the nut that's currently on there, the R5 Floyd Rose nut, while it is a wider nut, the string spacing as well as the radius don't match the bridge or the neck. So he's going to put the Ibanez locking nut on there that I included in the gig bag. And one thing he pointed out regarding the frets is that they were beginning to protrude and are not level, so he's going to do a fret level. And this is something I learned. I didn't even think about this. As far as the pickups go, he says that hard mounting pickups are great, which referring to direct mount, but you have to shim the pickup cavity floor to raise the pickups for the ideal height. This is common law. So yeah, I didn't know that. And one thing that surprised me was he said the neck geometry is correct, no need to cut anything. So that's good. And my wife is sitting here bored out of her mind, listening to me talk and do this stuff while she drinks wine. So anyways, that's the update that I have. So it's probably going to be, I would probably say a couple weeks before I get it back. Rob's got some guitars he needs to fix before mine. So with that being said, I'm going to enjoy my vacation with my wife up here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm going to have some videos coming up that will be very cool. So stay tuned. So with all that being said, even though the copper shielding is not really going to be necessary in this case, I'm going to keep it in there. Rob's not going to worry about taking it out, because I think it actually looks pretty cool. So, you know, even if it's not really going to benefit anything, I think cosmetically it looks really cool. So we're just going to keep it. So here's the tremolo system. And one thing you'll notice is that it's sitting much lower in the body, which that's what it should have been doing. But because of the thick neck heel, I had to raise it significantly just to get some play out of it. And here's another picture Scobie sent me where the geometry looks to be much better, which that's how it should have been looking in the first place. So there's the neck pocket after he did some work to it. There's the router and more pictures. So this thing should be ready on June 19th. Stay tuned, what should be the last video, part 16. Part 16, and likely to be the final video on the RG/John Petrucci style guitar build. We are here at Martin Music, where Scobie works out of, and according to him, the guitar is ready. So let's go see what we got. All right, we got the guitar in hand. Let's go home and plug this thing in. I've got a gig tonight, and I'm gonna try it out and see what I think. And it played really good. All right, guys. There she is in all her glory. Alright, so as I do in a lot of my videos, going to demonstrate the pickups. So on the bridge is a DiMarzio Evolution. So here we go. And here is the middle position. The neck pickup is a DiMarzio Air Norton. And normally on Petrucci's guitars, he likes to have the middle position be the two inner coils. But on mine, I wanted it to be the two outer coils for more of a second position stratty tone. So here's that. Here's the neck, Air Norton. I should note too, in regards to this tremolo, this is probably one of the coolest double locking tremolos I've ever played. It's an Ibanez Edge Pro, I believe, or whatever. And one thing that's cool is it sits pretty flat, so it's not as bulky as like a Floyd Rose is. Oh, it's the Low Pro is what it is. Ibanez Edge Low Pro. So yeah, that's a really good feeling tremolo, and the bar stays in pretty good and stuff. So yeah, I really like this. I'm usually not a fan of double locking trems, but for this guitar I made an exception, and if I was going to go with something, I was going to go with what fit, and this is what fit. So there you go. So there it is, clean, or you know, with the volume knob down.
Gotta get
My RG / John Petrucci inspired guitar build is finished. Even though the Picasso outline was already done on the guitar, having to tape all that and paint it was a pain. I'm sure for like professional painters and stuff, this would be a breeze for them, but me not being a professional painter, yeah, it was a little tedious. But at the end of the day, it was worth it. So now the big question remains, how much did all of this cost? Well, I've got a breakdown for you. So to give you kind of the best figure I could, all of these figures include taxes and shipping cost. And for simplicity, I just rounded it. So really the most expensive part of this was just getting Scobie to set it up. That ended up being about $387. It might sound expensive, but considering what he had to do as far as like routing and all that stuff, trust me when I tell you, it was well worth it. And he really should have charged me more. And besides the setup, the two other most expensive things were the Ibanez tremolo, which was $300, and the neck, which was $329. So the grand total for everything was roughly $1,887. That's certainly not cheap, and I'm sure there's other ways I could have cut cost, like maybe going with cheaper pickups or whatever, but I didn't want to spare any expense. And also, when you consider how much an actual Ibanez John Petrucci model goes for on Reverb, I'd say I did pretty good. And I should note too, this was the lowest price I found on a JPM. These can go for as much as $13,000. And not to mention the fact that since I was doing the build, I got to pick the colors. Which again, the colors I was going for was kind of a 90s theme. And I can't take credit for how these colors were described, but someone on here said, "Taco saved by the division bell." I love it. I don't know if I'll ever do another build as crazy as this, because it was hard work. But who knows, maybe I'll change my mind one day. But the end result turned out really good. I played it with Grand Theft Audio this past Sunday, and in my opinion, it looks awesome on stage. Very cartoonish, and I love it. And thanks to all of you for following me on this guitar building journey. It was a blast. Love and respect.